I remember the time when I started playing guitar. I'd rush home from school, ready the cables, turn on my amp, stretch my fingers, warm up for 30 minutes, and then finally start practicing. I would practice guitar for 4 hours straight, every single day. However passionate I was about it, before each practice session, I would sense this weird resistance weighing down on me. Countless excuses pop up in my head. Thoughts like, I don't feel like it, or do I really have to sit down all evening and practice guitar for yet another day? It's tiring, it's boring. Resistance is your number one enemy when it comes to work. It's invisible, but it can be felt or discerned in your thought pattern. It manifests often in a form of excuses, cynicism, or a general sensation of irritation. In my early beginnings as a guitar player, I would give in to those excuses. I skipped so many days of practice and it was detrimental to my progress. I failed so many times until I finally recognized that pattern. Every time you're gonna sit down and work on your passion, resistance will be right there waiting for you. Every single day. And if you forget about this fact, if you let your guard down even for a single day, resistance will triumph over you. Most of the time, excuses are made subconsciously. You rationalize and come to a conclusion that it's okay to procrastinate, and you're not even aware that you made this foolish decision. All of this happens at a subconscious level. I came to a point where I've skipped so many practice sessions, I've touched the stove so many times to a point that I familiarized myself with my excuses. And nowadays, every time I hear myself making them, I just shut up, sit down, and do the work. I became like the wretched, disobedient kid. Timmy, don't eat the candy. And then Timmy would go and do the exact opposite. I began interpreting my thoughts upside down like if I were crazy. I now see excuses as a trigger to actually sit down and do the work. I truly believe to succeed in this world you have to be a little bit insane. To beat resistance, you must train yourself to go against your thoughts and emotions. If you do not harness resistance soon enough, it will tame you, and you'll never be able to accomplish anything of significance. Even if you're tired, even if you're bored, do the work regardless. You will regret not having done so. And remember, resistance will always be waiting for you every single day. Just start. So far we said that resistance shows up in a form of excuses, but sometimes it manifests itself in a very seductive depiction. The second you think about working, your mind evokes memories of how boring and tiring work was yesterday and thus entices you into postponing it. In simple terms, the second you picture how much painful it is to work, lethargy kicks in. When I became more and more aware of this pattern, I had to come up with a counter thought to tell myself when that picture comes up again. So here's what I did. The second I catch myself picturing how boring it is to work, I merely deviate my attention to another thought that saves me almost every time. What is it? Just start. I've literally brainwashed myself with this single thought. Now here's why this thought is very effective. If you imagine all the difficulties your work entails, you're not gonna be that motivated to work, obviously. But if you simply say to yourself, I'm just gonna start, or I'll just work for 5 minutes, now all of a sudden everything seems much more easier. You must trick your brain by telling yourself that you're just gonna do the work for 5 minutes. And then funny enough, when you do start working, you'll start enjoying it. You'll get into a flow state and you'll end up working for hours and hours without even intending to. When you enter a flow state, the part of the brain responsible for logical thinking literally shuts down. This means there's no room for excuses to form at that point. Ideas start to pour in from your intuitive mind. The moment you tap into flow, you're not thinking anymore, you're just doing and doing and doing. But when you stop working, you forget about this fact. You forget about that feeling of being deeply immersed in your craft. When you're chilling out, the brain doesn't want to change gears. It's tiresome for your brain to switch from relaxation mode into work mode. The brain wants to conserve energy. This is why you have excuses. It's natural. And this is why your goal should be to trick your brain to just start. Don't focus on working, focus on starting. Resistance and peers. Your friends and family might resist your striving to change, to succeed, to follow your calling. Their resistance will often surface in a form of coldness and passive aggression. In most cases, the reason for this is they want you to say the same. They don't want to see you change. You should recognize this and avoid confrontation. Do not react emotionally to their cold attitude. Keep doing what you're doing, and eventually they'll either get used to it or move on. Resistance and doubt. In some cases, resistance gets blended with doubt. For example, you might find yourself questioning, I want to know if I'm actually on the right track, or am I just wasting my time on this project? Will all my hard work result in success, or am I just wasting resources here? This is resistance blended with doubt. You don't want to work anymore because you want to find out if you're doing well or not, if you're going to succeed or not beforehand. Otherwise, you'll start thinking that it isn't worth the grind anymore. Now, this is absolutely healthy. Everybody want to find out if they're actually on the right track or not, especially that business and creative ventures in general are often uncertain, foggy, so to say. The truth is, everyone is clueless about whether they're gonna succeed or not. We're all winging it. Do you think I know if my channel is gonna get big or not? To some extent, yes, I have my analytics. However, analytics are merely speculations. Numbers could go down at any second. For this reason, I don't focus on whether I'm gonna succeed or fail. I take pleasure in the lessons gained from the journey itself. Even if I were heading toward a disaster, I realize that that disaster is gonna turn out as a great learning experience for me. You're doubting yourself because you're too focused on the end goal. Whereas, if you convince yourself that the process of working in and of itself is a learning experience, the results will start to seem trivial. The pleasure is not when you have finished watching a movie, the pleasure is when you are actually watching the movie. Even if you're currently working on a project that's gonna lead to failure for sure, the hours you've put into it taught you discipline, focus, resilience, hard work, by which you'll find it easier to work on your next venture if that project fails. Thus, nothing you do is considered a waste of time, other than self-indulgence, of course. Every venture, successful or not, is a learning experience. This belief should bring about a relief on whether or not you're doing the right thing. There is no right or wrong thing to do. Whatever happens in your work life, it is meant to happen. And so the true artist shows up for battle every single day, hustles his face off, gives it all he's got, and allows results to come or not come, whatever they like.